What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Alex. Shout out to the Elite Fleet. Make sure you like and subscribe so you can become a member of Elite Fleet. And today, we're going to be doing a reaction to the debate between Destiny and Angryman about whether or not black women ruined everything. So right off the bat, that title kind of threw me off because I'm assuming y'all talking about the black community, and why would Angryman be having a debate with Destiny about the black community in general? I'm pretty sure there's other people you could have debated with who would have been more qualified to talk about that. But from what my subscribers told me, I guess the debate initially started about just the dynamics between men and women, and then eventually it turned into the black community. So let's check it out. You know, for those of you who've been subscribed to the channel, I've had some talks with Angryman before. I've been on a few of his panels. I'm not that familiar with Destiny, but I know he's supposed to be like some type of a debate king, and he travels around a bunch of different channels on YouTube debating people. So this will be my chance to check him out. But with that being said, we also know this is the most unbiased channel on YouTube. So I'm going to call it how it is. What's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. And y'all also know I don't like to waste too much time. So let's get straight into it. Destiny versus the Angryman debate. Let's talk about who won. Let's dissect these points. Let's go.
Was your position yesterday? You obviously came through the Bernard Riley show and had issue, I guess, with something he said, or you had debated Myron or something, and your position was that women have evolved and men are stuck in the past. That was your position?
In regards to like who needs to do what for like in the broadest sense, red pill people seem to give advice about how men and women operate and like what they need to do to succeed, what men need to do to succeed. And I tend to disagree with a lot of the framing. And part of it plays into kind of what you just said, yeah.
Okay, so what part of the framing do you have a disagreement about?
I feel like men need to work a lot more on relationship skills, that it's something that they just don't have much practice with. And it feels like for red pill communities, the obsession is like just be more traditional or become a top 1%er, which is advice for like 1% of the population. I don't think it's like a road to success for most people.
Okay, so right off the bat, I agree with Destiny about that. Like, this kind of reminds me, for those of you who are already subscribed to this channel, for those of you who aren't, check it out if you get a chance, when I debated the passport bro. And my initial question to him was, do you think most American men, let alone black men, but just most American men in general, the average American male, has enough money to not only be able to travel overseas, but to be able to stay long enough to properly vet a woman and her family system and her beliefs and check out her background and get to know her enough to even come to the conclusion he wants to be in a relationship with her, let alone marry her, then have the funds to fly her back to America, where he would be completely responsible for her because she would be leaving her family, her custom, and her cultures behind and relying completely on him for her survival? Do you think the average American man could pull all that off? And his response, because he decided not to be disingenuous, was no. So before I even got into any other points, the whole entire idea of flying overseas to marry a woman or find a submissive, nurturing, and caring woman was goofy, because the average man is not going to be able to do that. For you to be able to effectively do that, you would still have to be a top 10% man, which is the same issue that often the red pill runs into. Their solution to the problems between modern men and modern women's relationship dynamics is to go back to have men make so much money that they basically have all the leverage and can essentially buy submissiveness, nurturing, caring, and femininity from women, instead of earning it by being a masculine man. And I don't like that, because first of all, it's too many men going around right now thinking that their worth is solely tied to their wallet, which annoys me. There's so much more value to men than their wallet. All right. Men can give great advice. Men can be great shoulders to lean on. All right. One of the most attractive things about men to women that I tell men all the time is your knowledge. Can you teach them something? Can they learn something from you? Right. You can repair things. You can build things. You can fix things. OK, you have generally, you're less emotional, so you're more able to take on the stress of life without overreacting to it or having the breakdown. OK, you could be that stability. You could be that rock. All right. Yes, you could be a provider as well, but you also could be a protector. You're generally bigger. You're generally stronger. OK, you can be more intimidating. Do you have good father skills? All right. There's so many other reasons: companionship, friendship. There's so many other things that go into overall masculinity other than just solely how much money you make. And the red pill pretty much tells you to just go out and make a bunch of bread. And there's other aspects to it, such as being an alpha male, which I also don't like. I feel like men should just be themselves. But going out and making a bunch of money so that you could basically buy submission, nurturing, caring, feminine women is essentially their solution to it. But the problem is the top 10% of men are the top 10% of men for a reason, because only 10% of men are being able to achieve that. So if your solution is for men to go out and become high earning males, well, your solution doesn't work for 90% of men. So it's essentially useless. Just like the passport bowl strategy is essentially useless. So I understand what he's saying. And I do agree that men would be better off working on their masculinity, their personality, and their social skills rather than just going and trying to go on get rich quick schemes or go out here and try to get so much money that they can just buy fake submission, nurturing, and caring from a woman. Because at the end of the day, you could always fall off and then they won't even be there anymore because you brought it. So I do agree with him about them points. And a lot of red pillars do rely solely on the, well, just become a 10% man thing, which isn't really feasible for most American men.
Okay. Well, I would say that nowadays, most people don't really have good relationship skills. Not just men.
Okay. I think I would disagree. Do you want to talk about that, or?
Okay, I would agree with Angryman about that. I do think women and men are both struggling with relationship skills. I think that has to do with a lot of different things that I'm not going to say because, somebody, one of the two might bring it up. I don't know what they're going to say. So they might bring up something that I'm going to say, but including but not limited to the internet playing a big part in that.
Well, no, I really wanted to debate you about what we were talking about yesterday, as far as this whole concept, because correct me if I'm wrong, you have this concept that women have evolved and improved and made these changes and these leaps and bounds, and they kind of have just left men in the dust, right?
A little bit, yeah.
So how I'm trying to understand.
Well, we're going to wait to see what Destiny has to say, but I'll say this. Him saying that and him saying a little bit, I can't completely disagree with. Like, I made a video, I want to say a year ago, where I told men, women are getting pretty close to surpassing them. So this whole we make more money than you thing or we're the highest earner thing is pretty much going to be dead. And when I said that, a lot of men, they immediately ran to the whole, well, if you look at the charts, men still out-earn women across all races in America. Well, yes, but if you really analyze the data, you have to consider that includes a lot of baby boomer women, okay, and a lot of Generation X women. When I say women are getting ready to surpass men financially or at least match them, I'm specifically talking about millennial women, and I'm specifically talking about Gen Z, the women who were encouraged to go to school, the women who had more freedoms from jump and didn't get them later on. You also have to consider that a lot of baby boomers and Generation X were still housewives. If you know anything about basic mathematics, zeros kill averages. So every woman who's a housewife who doesn't work at all greatly diminishes the average earnings of women as a whole. And believe it or not, there's still a good amount of women who don't do that. My ex didn't work for a large portion of our relationship, and baby girl doesn't work right now. So those are zeros, and that kills an average. So if you were to take out all the housewives and only include working women, and you were to take out Generation X, and you were to take out the baby boomers, and you were just to compare working millennial and Gen Z women to working millennial and Gen Z men, I can almost guarantee you it's going to be about the same thing, if not women earning more. Because even with the baby boomers and the housewives and Generation X in there, men are still barely out earning women nowadays. If you look at the charts, we're talking about some of, like in the black community, the gap is only like $5,000. In the white community, I think it's like 10, but it's not a large gap in earnings between men and women anymore. So it's not unfeasible that this is going to happen. I don't see how men don't see this coming, but let's see what Destiny's going to say.
So I think that for a long time, the world was kind of like built by and built for men's existence. And over the past, I don't know what, 30, 40, 50 years, especially over the past like 20 years, women have been getting a lot of help or pushing in different ways in society to achieve and succeed and do better. And it was previously thought that, like, well, women can't attain educational levels similar to men. There are a lot of things that men can do that women can't do. And we're starting to see that, given a push, women are able to do a lot of these things. So we're seeing women right now, they're destroying men in school. And what we might be learning is it might be that women's brains, they're actually just better learners than men. That men might be like more physically oriented. We want to go outside, we want to do things or build things and stuff like that. Whereas women are more calm, chill. They can sit in a classroom, take notes, and do class all day, right? If that's the case, then we're kind of like setting women up for success better than we are even setting men up for success. And it's hard to have a conversation about what to do to like make men successful. So as women have kind of like improved their lot and standing in society through things like school, reproductive control, better career opportunities, men are kind of like sitting here like, well, what am I supposed to do? People have cried about toxic masculinity for 2 decades. A job is not enough to secure a wife anymore. I have no idea what to do or where to go to in society. That seems to be like where guys are stuck at right now. And when I look at the red pill communities, it's just like a bunch of like what feels like women hating rhetoric, and then like appeals to tradition or appeals to try to become the top 1%. Like that's my issue. Like that's not good advice for anybody. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't agree with Destiny about the red pill being women hating. There are definitely some zealots in the manosphere and the red pill community that can make it look very bad. But honestly, they're more so whiners than they really are women haters. I don't want to put the women hating, to throw women hating out there and misogyny out there, that's like a trigger word. That's how you get people canceled. That's how you get people death threats. Like that's extreme. I don't think most of them are that, okay? Now you have some red pill community who I wouldn't even consider to be whiners, right? Like I don't really consider Richard Cooper to be a whiner. I don't consider Alpha Male Strategies to be a whiner. I don't consider Rollo Tomasi to be a whiner. I don't consider MJ Get Right to be a whiner. But there are a lot of whiners and criers and just men who complain, kind of similar to what Justine said, because women are coming up in the world now that they can't buy women and they have no personality or masculinity or anything else dope about themselves. They're like, oh, what are we supposed to do? Like get a life, I guess. So I do agree that there's a lot of whiners in there, but to just call them women haters or say it seems like women hate, it's a dangerous word that I wouldn't just toss out there. I don't think it's fair to put them all under that umbrella. So I do disagree with Destiny about that.
Okay, well, there's a couple of things wrong with what you said. Number one, women are not blowing men out of the water when it comes to education. We've actually been lowering the standards for them to actually be able to achieve certain things. They've actually lowered the standards when it comes to a lot of the different studies. They've lowered the standards when it comes to the barrier to entry, when it comes to the military, numerous things. So it's not that women are blowing men out of the water. It's that we're catering to them, which we have always done. The men haven't really built the world for themselves. The majority of the inventions and the things that we've come up with, we've came up with in order to make life more comfortable for women. So it's not that they're blowing us out of the water. And it's not that the men actually have are stuck in a position. What men have found is they live in a world now where the focus has been on women and catering to women, while simultaneously ostracizing men and making them feel like they're not worth anything or they don't have any value. When men, by and large, still do many of the jobs that maintain the infrastructure of our society.
Okay, so the part about lowering standards, I don't agree with that. I would have to look into it more, but my familiarity with lowering the standards is I know that there has been research done for University of California schools where for certain affirmative action programs, they would lower the standards to get more minority students, namely African-American students, to enroll in these colleges. But when they lowered the standards there, what would happen is more of those students would apply and get accepted to the colleges, but the graduation rates and absolute numbers stayed the same. So they were getting into school, but then they were flunking out because the standards were lowered and they weren't able to attain the degree. So if they were lowering the standards and more women were getting accepted, but they weren't graduating, then I might agree with you, but that's not the case. We're talking about graduation rates right now. If the standards were lowered, and that's what was allowing women to graduate more, then we would see men graduating at the same rates as they were before, but they aren't, right? Especially over the coronavirus period, a lot of men were expected to stay home and work, whereas women didn't have those same burdens placed on them. Also, women have a bit more available to them in the world of like affirmative action and kind of like assistance for women to go to school. You are seeing women, not just because the standards are lowered, but because society's pushing them in a direction, they are doing better in school, like full stop.
Well, here's the reality about that.
I mean, that's pretty much all facts that he just said. I don't know when they lowered the standards specifically so that women could get into school. I didn't want to interrupt there because I just wanted to see if something was going to be said to make that make sense. But he's 100% correct when he's like, if that was the case, then there should be more men getting in and graduating, and there isn't. So that's really irrelevant. So that was a very good point by Destiny, but let's continue.
It's not that difficult to do better in school when you're taking gender studies or getting a degree in basket weaving. Or is that across the board in STEM, or is that across the board in gender studies and other things like that, arbitrary stuff that really doesn't amount to anything? First of all, you have to realize that when it comes to education, the enrollment of men is down across the board anyway. Because like I said before, we live in a society now that is very hostile towards men. So there are a lot of different things that men don't want to be a part of anymore. They don't want to be a part of college, the college experience anymore, simply for the fact that it's a hostile environment for them. Everything is about toxic masculinity and all of this crap. And let's be honest, the colleges are no longer institutions of higher learning. They've now become institutions of indoctrination, with gender studies and all of this other crap that most men can't really identify with, especially if they're red-blooded American males. They find this whole thing that's going on right now extremely hostile. And when you talk about women graduating, right, I don't know, I can't speak to the whole spectrum of women, but I do know when it comes to the black community, yes, black women are the most enrolled. And yes, they do graduate, but they usually graduate with some ridiculous degree that they don't even use. Not to mention the fact that women that actually do become entrepreneurs, 96% of their freaking businesses fail. So no, they're not outpacing men. They just live in a society that has stacked the deck against men and catered to them. Every single program that comes out now is for women.
Okay, all right. So Angryman said a whole bunch that's wrong there. First of all, I don't know any woman in life who took gender studies. Actually, I lied. I did know one woman who worked in the HR department one time who took gender studies. But most of the women I know, right, like I'm college educated, most of the women I know went to school for nursing or in the medical field, right, to become, like, one of my exes is a dentist. Another one of my exes was in school for dermatology, okay? One of my exes went to school for psychology, right? But a lot of women are going into some type of a doctorate field. Like I said, even if it's psychology, okay? Dentistry, going to become doctors. The vast majority of almost all nurses are women. So when you say most women are going to school for basket weaving, what? Like, no, honestly, if there was going to be any profession that most women are going to school for, it's usually medical school, or it's usually going to school for nursing school or something like that. Like, it ain't going to be basket weaving. But I also know a lot of women who work in data. Like, those of you who've been on the channel know I was dating a CDO, which is a chief data officer. Okay. I was dating another woman who did data government contracts up in D.C. for the government. So for him to say basket weaving is basically just condescending and not wanting to give women their credit. That's not fair. Like, what? Who's going to school for basket weaving? And it's also weird because Angryman took art when he was in college. So when you talk about pointless majors and things that's not worth going to school for, I would say art is one of them. So I don't understand where he got that or came up with that ideology necessarily from. But I definitely can't agree that most women are going to get degrees in, like, basket weaving and things that don't matter. Now, when you talked about the black community specifically, you're talking about black women, the same thing applies. Again, all the women I just named were black. Okay, you know, my ex is a dentist. I'm currently dating the CDO. Like my other ex was in school for dermatology. My other ex graduated with a degree in psychology. So it's like, who's taking basket? Like, I'm not seeing that. Another woman I was dating, like I was just telling you, I was working government contracts and data. Like, I don't know what he's talking about when he's saying that. That's just like one of those talking points that sounds nice if you're in a room that's an echo chamber, but it doesn't really apply when you come out into the real world. That just, honestly, that just seems like a hater statement. And as far as his comments about men walking away from college because they see college as hostile and it's toxic masculinity. Again, when I was in school, I never heard anything about toxic masculinity. Now, I was only in school about 8 years ago, so it wasn't like it was that long ago. When I was in school, I had a great time. Me and all my homeboys all had a great time. We went on spring break multiple times, legendary times on spring break, okay? We had homecomings. We had great time at the homecoming parties. We had great time. Like, we used to call the female dorm IHOP, which was the International House of Pussy. But seriously, we had great time. I had a great time in college. I got to get away, get out of New York. I got to get away from my family. It's where I found myself as a man. It's where I learned how to take care of myself. I fell on my head a few times, but I also got back up on my feet on my own. Like, college was legendary for me. My college experience was lit. So I don't understand where he's getting this idea that most men don't like college or that college is hostile. College is where you're going to get the most beautiful women in their prime. Honestly, when we're talking about women having unrealistic expectations in college, they don't really have any because we're all broke college students. So that's going to be also be the time where you can get the most women for the less without having to become an elite male. Most men I know, the highlight of their V-Box getting days was in college. And that's to go along with the parties, and that's to go along with the traveling, that's to go along with the lifetime friendships. All my boys from college are still my boys to this day, literally. That's to go along with if you were playing sports. That's to go along with if you joined any orgs. I was in several different organizations on campus. So I completely disagree that men don't like college. Again, this sounds like hating from someone who didn't go to college and doesn't really know what they're talking about when it comes to college. But let's see what Destiny had to say.
I hear this argument is brought up a lot that women just get degrees in like basket weaving and gender studies. Do you sincerely believe that that's the majority types of degrees that women are getting, or I'm just trying to figure out before I go down that road?
So you believe most women, when they enroll in college, they go into STEM?
I didn't say STEM, but you know that there's more than just STEM and basket weaving, right?
Okay, well, my thing is, and I've stated this numerous times on my show, I think if you're not going into the STEM field, college is a waste of time and waste of money.
Okay, that's fine if that's your opinion, but
okay, that's a stupid opinion. Because again, so the woman who went to school for nursing was a waste of time and a waste of money. Because one of my friends is a traveling nurse and shorty makes 6 figures. So what are you talking about? If you went to school to become a dentist, that's a waste of time and money. If you went to school to become a doctor, that's a waste of time and money. If you went to school to become a lawyer, that's a waste of time and money. If you went to school to become a biologist, that's a waste of time and money. I guess that would technically fall into science, but so then let me switch it. If you went to school to become an actuary, which most people probably don't know what the hell that is, but that's basically a souped up version of an accountant. That's a waste of money because actuaries make 6 figures. If you went to school for finance, that's a waste of money. If you went to, like, I don't understand that. There's so many different other things you could go to school for and make a crap ton of money besides just STEM. If you went to school for psychology, is that a waste of money? Like, what are we talking about here? That's a ridiculous statement that he just made.
True, and 2, there are other purposes to college, right? You can make money outside of STEM.
We can say that it's not. First of all, if you look at the way college is set up now, and you look at the amount of student loan debt that you're going to get into after 4 years at a university, going for anything other than STEM absolutely is a waste of time.
Okay,
no, it's not. No, it's not. Again, if you go to school to be a lawyer, it justifies the debt. A doctor justifies the debt. A dentist justifies the debt. Nursing justifies the debt. Finance justifies the debt. Like, what are we really talking about here? Actuary justifies the debt. Again, there's so many other things you could go to school for and come out of school making enough money to justify the debts besides just STEM. You don't have to be in STEM. STEM is a great field, but you do not have to be in STEM. This is a weak argument.
Okay. One, you're assuming that there's so many bad assumptions here. I'm sorry. One, when you say waste of time, what you really mean is that the only thing you should be looking for, the only thing college should do is prepare you for a job. That's the only purpose of college.
Yes.
Okay. That's not true, right? There are important, like, fields of education that we would want people to do more research in. It's important to have people that... such as, I don't know, having, like, historians, having writers. A lot of women get jobs in education. Teachers are arguably some of the most important people in society.
Historians, the vast majority of the history that they teach every single decade, we find out it's a lot of the shit is freaking lies. Are you serious right now?
What do you mean?
Historians?
What do you mean by find out their lies? Like from other YouTubers, or what do you mean?
No, by other people who go and do the research. It's
historians, right?
We find out this not formally trained historians. Not formally trained historians.
Can you give me
okay, so if it's not a formally trained historian, isn't that a YouTuber? But let's continue.
Don't have one off the top of your head. That's totally
Angryman
fine.
be watching them conspiracy theories.
But like, can you give me like an example of like, this is something that historians thought was one way, and then like an amateur investigator completely overruled and figured out that all the historians were wrong?
Okay. Well, let's start with say ancient Egypt. There were a bunch of historians that made a bunch of claims about the Egyptians, and a gentleman by the name of Dr. Ben Yakinen actually went to Egypt and actually found out that a lot of the things they were saying were not true. That's one example.
What is this in relation? What was like a claim that wasn't true? Wait, hold on. Is this like, this isn't like the Yakubian shit, is it? Is this something different, or
we're gonna start with, let's not go off into that. The main
he don't want to go off into that because he don't really have a good example.
Is that yes, okay, you have people who go to college, they want to become artists. I went to school for art, right? You have people that go to college become artists. You have people that go to college become historians, and all of that's cool. But the point that I'm trying to make is when we're talking about the importance of our society and the structure, I'm talking about the bare bone structure of it functioning. We need engineers, we need scientists, we need people in the STEM field. So if we're talking about the importance of women, if we're talking from your perspective that women are outpacing men, I'm going to be looking at that field. I'm not going to be looking at art and history and stuff like that.
I don't want a society that just has the bare bones. That sounds miserable. We need things like art. This is where we spend like 95% of our time.
And I totally agree with that. I'm an artist. I totally agree with that. But the problem is your premise is that women are outpacing men. In order for women to outpace men, they would have to be outperforming them in the bare bones of our society, the things that make the structure run. That's the point that I was making yesterday.
Again, if women make up the majority of nurses, that's not considered the bare bone of a society because women just decided, okay, we're not going to be nurses. We're not going to be CNAs. We're not going to be CMAs. The whole entire society will fall apart and hundreds of thousands of people would die. So this is really a goofy argument. I don't really understand why Destiny is struggling with this. But this is a goofy-ass argument that Angryman is making right now. This is silly.
Okay, I don't even know if we disagree. This might just be a semantics thing. Earlier, it sounded like you agreed with me that society has structured itself around accelerating women, and it seems to be doing a good job at that, and a lot of men are being left behind. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree with that?
It is accelerating women, but in a very... in a disproportionate way and in a very sneaky, underhanded way. It's not like, okay, let's try this, right? Let's try this. Because I think your perception of Red Pill or the manosphere is that just everybody over here just hates women, blah, 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 blah. I don't have an issue with women competing if they're actually competing. In other words, if the playing field is level. But what we have going on today is not a level playing field. We have a rigged game. On the one hand, we have people saying, okay, well, women are equal to men. Women are fully capable of doing what men do. You've even said a second ago that women, you kind of implied that women were smarter than men.
I did.
So
hold on, let me be real clear. What I said was their biology might be better suited to classrooms than men.
It's better suited to following. That's
I don't know if following is that's a stupid loaded term. Let's hold on, wait,
you're getting sensitive over terminology.
No, I'm not getting sensitive over terminology. I just want to be clear with their terms, okay? Here's fact number one. Most men are followers. Most men are not leaders, okay? So most people in general are followers. When I say that women are better suited towards learning,
that's a fact that he's stating. Most men are followers, and at some point you have to be a follower before you even gain the ability to lead. And then you have to have enough talent and a galvanizing enough personality that you're talented enough for people to offer you a leadership position. You have a galvanizing enough personality that people want to follow behind you. So all men cannot do that. So Destiny's right about that as well.
Case that male bodies are just more in general suited towards activity. They want to be outside, they want to be doing things, they want to be building things. This is why all of our little boys are getting diagnosed with ADHD, because sitting inside of a classroom all day with your head staring at a textbook and doing notes is agonizing to a lot of young men. That's just something that we're not built for as well. Whereas women don't mind. They are better at like being calm, at being chill, at being more cerebral, taking notes, studying and doing that. That just seems to be a thing that their biology seems to be better suited for. I'm not saying one is a follower and one is a leader or one is smarter or one is dumber. I'm just saying in the ways that we are, women seem better suited to classroom environments. That's what I'm saying.
First of all, we can't look. I'm not a leftist, so I'm not ultra sensitive when it comes to terminology. Okay, there are structures in our society that are very important that have leaders and have followers. Okay, now I will agree that the boys do not like sitting in a classroom all day. It's frustrating to them. But men are naturally more rebellious than women are. And the reason why is because men are not natural followers. Even if you have structures where men are following, why do you think in the military they have to have a boot camp? Because those men have to be basically conditioned to follow properly because they are naturally rebellious. There's a reason why when girls are in school, they do better in school, because the way that structure is, they're given instructions and we understand what the school system is. The school system was designed around the Prussian school system, which basically was created for the purpose of creating factory workers, created for the purpose of creating better soldiers, okay? People that are going to follow suit. That's exactly what the educational system is here in America, all right? So it's not an insult to say that women are followers. That's not an insult. It's just the reality. Men are not as prone to follow as women are.
I'm just saying that
I actually agree with Angryman about men not being as prone to follow as women are. I agree that it's a combination of just natural masculinity. You always want to kind of lead and be the boss. I've talked about that before. This is why I stated in one of my videos before in the past that as a man, when you start a business, it's better to do business and hire and work with women, because women do follow instructions better, and it's easier and simpler for them to follow behind you and not try to overthrow your business. Whereas most men, especially if you're not really close with the men, and even if you are, will most likely try to overtake or overthrow your business or try to become the alpha dog or the top man in your business. I also agree that it has some to do with what Destiny stated about men just wanting to be more up and more active and doing things manually and physically with their hands and moving around versus just sitting there taking instruction. This is why men usually work more skilled labor jobs, such as welding, such as getting their CDLs, such as being an electrician and things of that nature, circuit boarding, than women do. Right? So both things can be true at the same time. They both have a solid point on that one.
People are followers. We have to.
But Destiny's right about that too. Most people are followers in general, but men are more prone to want to take the position of leadership.
Work only works if you have one manager and many employees. The army only works if you've got one general and many soldiers. A country only works if you've got one president and many constituents. Most people are followers. Society only works. That's why there's the whole phrase, too many chiefs and not enough Indians. You have to have followers in society, right? So
that's true.
And then even when we look at classrooms where we're saying like, oh, like women are better to following, and that's why they do better in classrooms. Who's teaching? Who's leading the classrooms? It's women. Isn't it like 95% of teachers are women? Like
now.
No,
now, but here's the thing. You just said something that gave validity to my point. Where do you think the term "there's too many chiefs and not enough Indians" comes from? The reason you have that term is because every time you have a group of men following another man, there's always a subset of men that's trying to overthrow that man. So no, they're not naturally followers. Men will follow until they're in a position to take over. The reason why most men follow is not because they're just like, well, I'm going to, go with the flow. They follow because they don't have the power to take over who's ever in the position above them. That's the reason why men do it.
And he's right about that. That's exactly why I said you should do business with women. But anyway.
I don't know where to move from here. I've had a lot of experience managing a lot of people across a diverse amount of, whether it's video games, whether it's business, whether it's organizing podcasts, whether it's just watching people in society. Like, most people gravitate towards following. Most men don't want the responsibility of being in charge of other people. Most men don't want the responsibility of taking on the negatives of an outcome of a decision that involves other people. That's just, being in a leadership role is really difficult.
No, but they want the glory.
Yeah, but that's not being a leader. That doesn't count. Everybody wants to. That doesn't count.
But no, that's where that comes from. In order for you to get the accolades, the glory, to get the ego boost, every dude, even if they admit it or not, has had a desire to be that guy, to be the head guy.
Sure, everybody can have a desire. That's fine. If you want to say something like men have a desire to be leaders, that's fine. I would agree with you there. But men are not naturally leaders. Leadership is a skill that's crafted over time. Most people are not suited for it, and just wanting the glory of being a leader does not make you somebody that is a leader.
So you're talking about okay. So we're getting into, look. Here's the thing. I'm not saying that every man that spawns has the ability to be freaking Julius Caesar. That's not what I'm saying.
That's not even what I'm saying. But all right.
Well, you're saying that, I'm assuming that you're saying that men naturally have the ability to be great leaders, right?
All I'm saying is, broadly speaking, men and women have way more in common than they do separately from each other. And when people
totally disagree with that.
I'm sure you do. When people try to draw these hardcore...
I will say men and women do have more in common than they have separate, but that 10 to 20% that we're different is an extreme 10 to 20%. And if you're not in your femininity or in your masculinity or balanced enough, as I like to call it, meaning you're in your masculine, but you can switch into enough feminine to understand, or you're in your feminine, but you can switch into enough masculine to understand, you're going to struggle with that 20% hard. So yes, we are mostly alike. But again, like I said, that 10 to 20% where we're different can be extreme if you don't know how to handle it. And we do definitely have to acknowledge that.
Operations out of like, men are leaders, women are followers, like these broad generalizations, they end up missing like most of the story, and they send people down really mind-fucked paths that don't accurately describe the world, and then it leaves them ill-suited to succeed in the world. That's my problem.
Well, I mean, look, in a perfect world, that might actually be a reality. But we don't live in a perfect world. And I refuse to believe that we can circumvent hundreds of thousands of years of bioevolution with, less than 100 years of a certain ideology? Like, really? So the entire civilization has gotten it wrong up until 50 years ago. Now, all of a sudden, the new age way of thinking is the way we're supposed to do things.
I don't know when you say like gotten it wrong. I mean, like, if you want to talk about do you believe like in the nuclear family?
Well, you gotta be careful with that statement, because basically you use the argument of we've been doing something for X amount of time, so it has to be the right way of doing it. If you're gonna say that, I mean, you could argue the civil rights movement only passed about 50, 60 years ago. So if you're going to argue that, you could say, well, black people haven't had basic human rights in this country for the vast majority of hundreds of years. So we're going to argue now that the country is better because they have them. Because then you got to say, well, women haven't had rights for the vast majority of American history. So you're going to argue now that we shouldn't have them because, you know, why change something that's been that way for years and it was working? So why would we change it? You're going down a slippery slope when you bring that up. Then you got to start to get into slavery, and not just African-American slavery, just slavery in general. Then you got to start to get into rape and conquest. You're basically saying that a lot of effed up things are okay if you're just going to use the argument that we did something for hundreds of years, so why change it now? That's a bad argument.
Like, that's a really new concept. Hundreds of thousands of years of bioevolution is us living like together as like groups of people, like hunting for berries and like chasing animals down. Like that's what hundreds of thousands of years of bioevolution have gotten us.
But that's what built up to it. That's what built up to it.
Okay, well then fine. Then I could just use your same argument and say, well, that's building up to this then.
That's a good point. But the problem with that is you can't really come from that position because the way we are starting to do things now is totally the freaking opposite. And are we getting the results that we got with the previous things?
Well,
are we getting good results now?
Because with respect to what?
As far as the interaction between men and women, the way I see it, when I look around at the interaction between men and women, there's something terribly wrong going on right now.
Well, and
for one, they've done studies that have proven not only women, but people in general are the most unhappy that they've ever been in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. Specifically women. They've done numerous studies on this. So if this new age way of us doing things, this new progressive way, you know, because I'm a if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of guy. If this new age way of doing things is so freaking awesome, then why is everybody so miserable? Why do the men have such a high depression rate, a high deletion rate? Why are the women going to bed with a glass of wine? Why is everybody so unhappy? When we have more, we live better today than we've ever lived in the history of the world, as far as, you know, our homes, as far as our the food that we can get and everything else. Our quality of life is way better than it was in the 1920s or the 1950s, but we're the most unhappy. What's the reason for that?
Okay.
Well,
I think
we're going to see what Dusty has to say, but right off the bat, I don't necessarily think that necessarily has anything to do with relationships. Relationships plays a part in why people are unhappy today, and I think it's just people don't know how to adjust to society as it is. We have a lot of men who can't really live up to being the provider and taking care of all the bills, but they still want to be treated the way a woman can really only treat you if you are that provider. Like, for example, I expect my women, right, to do the majority of the cooking, to do the vast majority of the cleaning, right, and the rearing of the children. But I put my women in a position where they don't have to work so that they can focus on that. A lot of you guys don't make enough money to do that, but you still expect that from a woman, which is an unfair and unrealistic expectation when she has to work just like you do. If that's the case, then yeah, you should be helping her out. On the flip side of that, a lot of women don't know how to adjust either, because if you're going to go out here, bust your ass, get a degree, and become a boss chick, and Miss Independent, get your degree, and make all this money, but you don't want to pay 50-50, then what's the point in you making money? Like, and I think that people are struggling to let go of these gender roles, right? Because women still want to be treated like women in the sense of they still want the men to pay for the date. They still want the men to coddle them. They still want the men to be the primary providers, but they're putting themselves in a position, a masculine position, to do what they still want the men to do, which means you're vastly eliminating your pool of men who will even be able to do that for you. If you go out and make yourself a six-figure earner, chances are as a woman, you're going to have six-figure bills. Well, only 10% of men make six figures. So if you want a man to be a provider, you're going to need someone who makes upper six figures, like 500,000 to millions of dollars. You're going to have a hard time. Everybody wants that man. You're going to have a hard time even finding that man. Vice versa, as a man, if you're content with your job, making $50,000, $60,000 a year, you're not going to have enough money to have a housewife, let alone put some kids in said housewife. You're going to need at least six figures, which means you're going to have to make yourself a top 10% of men, which, again, as if it was that easy, then it wouldn't be a top 10% of men. everybody would just do it. So women are out here getting money, getting degrees, stacking up $100,000 worth of rent, worth of car payments because they got their Mercedes Benz. They went out and bought a house, so they got their mortgage. They have all these bills that they have to pay that unless they run into a millionaire or a high earning man, like I said, 500,000 or above, he's not going to be able to pay all them bills for it. So she's going to have to work. So at that point, she's going to have to help, aka she put herself in a 50-50 position. But a lot of women are still expecting to be treated like a traditional woman. But you have to work because you don't have no bills like the traditional women do. And vice versa. Like I said, a lot of men want women to play traditional roles, but they cannot afford to give them the space to rest in their femininity enough to do that. That plays a factor in it, yes. But I also think people comparing each other's lives via social media and looking at people's highlight tapes online and never seeing their L's makes them feel like they're not doing good enough, makes them feel like they're not doing good enough fast enough, makes them feel jealous or like they're missing out. FOMO. That has a lot to do with why people are sad nowadays, okay? The over consumerism of the country. Okay, the fact that we're in a recession, the fact that inflation is raising higher than raises has a lot to do with why people are unhappy today. You know, like there's multiple levels to this, right? The capitalism of how everything's about a dollar. All relationships are about money. Your job just looks at you as a number. You're not even a human anymore, okay? Everybody's trying to get over. Everybody's trying to scam. Everybody's trying to make a buck. That has a lot to do with why people are unhappy today. So you can't just write that all up into relationships. But let's see what Destiny has to say.
Are all really good questions. But I just want you to think of like what you're saying. People are unhappy. We live better than we've ever lived before, but we're still miserable. Why is everybody so miserable? Our quality of life is better, but we're still miserable. Why are we so unhappy? We are the most unhappy we've ever been, okay? The framing on all of this is that it seems like all of us have problems right now. It's not just a man versus woman thing. It's not just something happening on the male side or the female side. It seems like there is something that is pushing people in a miserable direction. Now, I have my thoughts and ideas on that. I think a lot of it has to do with the internet and especially cell phones. And I think the way that we engage with all of that stuff is destroying our minds. We're putting screens in front of people at like 3 years old and like ADHDing the out of them before they've even stepped foot inside of a classroom. I think that we are like watching more content, like scrolling our phones constantly. That's like destroying our brain's ability to get like happiness and enjoyment out of like normal things in life. I think that we have a really hard time seeing people in real life because we're replacing all of our real life connections with online Discord group chats and everything. I think that these are all like really good things to talk about and understand. But when all of this gets shoehorned into like, well, the reason why we're so miserable is because we've stepped away from like traditional like boy-girl relationships or whatever. I feel like now instead of talking about all of that other stuff that I think is having a negative impact on all of us, we get hyper fixated on some really silly man versus woman gender dynamic when there are issues that are facing every single person in society today that's making all of us fucking miserable. That's my issue, I guess.
Yeah, Destiny basically agrees with me.
I don't disagree with any of that, but I'll add one caveat. It's not that it's just about the gender roles, but that is part of it. That's part of it. We can look. I can sit here all day and we can talk about the negative impact of social media, the negative impact of putting a freaking screen in a 2-year-old's face, the negative impact of every new age thing that we have that has given us information overload. We can talk about that all day, but we can't ignore the fact that when you start playing with the gender roles in any society, and this has been studied over and over, this is not the first time we've had a society or a civilization where we began to play with the gender roles and it wreaked havoc. It caused problems with us because that is something that is part of us, regardless. In fact, you even did it yesterday. You even did it yesterday when we were having that discussion, that was heightened discussion. But towards the end of that discussion, you said, well, who's going to watch the kid if he's out working? And you said a woman. Now, why would you say a woman unless you still have gender roles burned into your brain?
Okay, I'm not here to say that all gender roles should be abolished, right? So in the beginning part of this conversation, I made the argument that there are differences between men and women that leave them suited towards other things, right? That's why I said that women seem to be excelling in classroom environments. I think yesterday you asked me the question: if every man were to disappear from the planet, things would fall apart. If every woman were to disappear from the planet, things would carry on as normal, which isn't true. But like,
well, no, I didn't.
or maybe not carry on as normal, but society would still function or something, right?
Let me correct that. No,
Okay,
what I said, and look, this is what I said. I said, if women took a day off, not if they disappeared. I don't want to live in a world with no women. So let's just go ahead and get that clear. If they took a day off from their jobs, and the reason why I say that is because women tend to stay away from a lot of the heavy lifting jobs. A lot of the jobs that are, I mean, sure, you'll find a woman that's an airline pilot. You'll find a woman that wants to do construction, but that is few and far between. If the men decided one day to just take a day off, the guys that work at nuclear power plants, the guys that fly planes, the guys that pick up our trash, the guys that do all of the things that make our world run, it would cause a serious problem. That's what I said.
Sure. So what we're saying is like,
if women took a day off, we'd probably die, considering the fact that the vast majority of the medical field, as I mentioned earlier, is made up of women. If women took a day off, your kids will also get even stupider than they already are because the vast majority of the education system is made up of women. You also wouldn't have anyone to watch your kids while you were going to work because the vast majority of the daycare and childcare system is made up of women. So what are we talking about here? This is a stupid point. Like, again, this is what I mean when I tell you guys a lot of these red pill points don't work outside the echo chamber. They're just going to make you seem like you're delusional and like you're a zealot. But let's continue.
men do backbone of society jobs and women do complementary work, basically, right?
Yeah. Yeah, more or less.
Yeah, but I think the important thing to recognize about that is the backbone jobs don't work without that complementary work. That's kind of what I'm saying, right? Like, let's say that a man, and this is why I used the family example yesterday, but it doesn't have to be a family example, it could be anything. But if men are off doing this backbone work, then you need somebody to take care of families. The only way that a man can go and do that work is if somebody can empower him to do it by staying home and taking care of, say, children, right? That's why I use that example. That even if men are doing the backbone work, they can only do it because of the complementary job that exists where women are allowing it to happen, essentially. It's like having a supervisor for a restaurant. The supervisor isn't cooking and bussing tables in the front, but like the employees wouldn't be able to manage themselves without somebody kind of like working things in the back. I don't mean to say that like women lead men. I'm just saying that the roles complement each other.
Well, here's the thing about that, which I didn't get to say yesterday. Number one, my position is not that men can be totally independent of women. That's not my position. Human beings are interdependent. We're all dependent upon each other. However, when you start looking at the dynamic of men and how men operate, it is extremely plausible that a man can go out here in the world, be successful without the support of a woman. Now, if you look at it as a whole, then yeah, you might be able to make a few points where it's like, oh, well, women do this job or that job. And
well, women could go out here and be successful without the help of a man, too. We're going to make that argument. I mean, that's another goofy argument. He's trying too hard right now. This is silly.
Job might be beneficial or whatever to what the men are doing. But the job, a lot of those complementary jobs that women are doing, men could do. Okay, women just recently. You said something about the nuclear family recently, right? Just recently, a new thing, which it is a new thing, right? I would argue that it probably. Well, I'm not going to go into that. That being a new thing, another new thing is women being in the workforce. That's fairly new.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, that's one of the ways that I think when I talk about women evolving, I think that's one of the things that's happened.
Okay, so guess what? Up to that point, we still had a functioning society. Up to that point, with the world still spun. Up to that point, we were still able to constantly improve. We were still able to get awesome inventions that have improved the human condition.
But post women entering the workforce, our world is better now in a lot of ways than it was 80 years ago. Yeah.
Our world is better now because it's naturally progressing. But how many impactful inventions have we had since we moved into this age of let's promote women? How many inventions have we had that have been as impactful as the cotton gin, the printing press, the steam engine?
like the microprocessor and the cell phone and the internet are probably two of the biggest inventions in human history, I would say.
You just got through saying that the cell phone is what's causing the biggest problems. It's making us unhappy.
Sure, things can be used in bad ways. I mean, gunpowder was an amazing invention too, but it's mainly used to kill people. Are you asking me what the amazing inventions are? Or are you asking me the ones that make everybody feel better, right?
Yeah, I mean, Destiny has a strong point. Like, you can't say that. Video game systems, there's been numerous things that have been invented and come out since women have entered the workforce. Now, if you're going to make an argument that women are inventing these things, that's a different discussion, but that's not what he said. Okay, yeah, men are the inventors. Okay, yeah, that's fine. The men did create the majority of everything in society. We did come up with the construct of house. We do build the houses. We did come up with the construct of computers, the construct of the internet, the construct of the cell phone, the construct of the video game system. This is an argument I use all the time when people try to say that men are useless. However, it doesn't negate women's worth when you consider, again, all the, similar to what Destiny says, support level jobs that women do that we still couldn't function without. So now we're just getting into, well, who's more impactful? Well, again, if women make up the majority in the medical field, I can't say that men are more impactful because they did the majority of the inventions. Like that doesn't necessarily add up. But let's continue.
Architecture and the internet are like the biggest things that have accelerated everything in the world, like probably more than any other invention in human history, more than
nobody's disagreeing with that.
Well, sure, but you asked me, like, were there any big inventions since the cotton gin or whatever, now that we've had women in the workplace? And
No. What I said was, what are the inventions that we've had now that have been as impactful?
Sure, and I would argue that, like, cell phones and the internet have been some of the most impactful things ever in all of human history.
They've made an impact, but I wouldn't say the most impactful. There's no way that is as impactful, because if you look at the reason why I say
where are you from? Where do you live?
Where do I live?
Yeah.
Yo, you can't bring up the cotton gin and the printing press and then say cell phones and the internet are not impactful. Come on, son. That's wild.
Okay, I'm in Miami. I'm talking to you in real time. Both of us can see each other's videos, and there's like 10 or 20,000 people, and there's going to be hundreds of thousands of more that watch on a YouTube channel later on. That type of reach,
awesome.
type of reach and communication, dude. The printing press, would never.
I'm not discounting that. That's awesome. But look, here's the thing: when you have the printing press, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you got the printing press. Cool. Now we can have books that are printed identically. We don't have to worry about people tampering with books, tampering with their information, right? However, the same way that somebody could use the printing press negatively, right? Mm-hmm. I would argue that, yes, the way we can communicate is awesome. We can reach a lot of people. But guess what? Any idiot can get up here and fire up a freaking live stream and just give the whole world a bunch of misinformation. Right or wrong. And then people will sit there and watch it because, like you said earlier, you got 2-year-olds that's got a screen in front of their face, right? Mm-hmm. But a 2-year-old...
I mean, that's true, but any idiot could have also went to the printing press, made a magazine, got the magazine officially sanctioned as a business, and went out handing out magazines with their opinion. As a matter of fact, people used to put out propaganda articles all the time where half the shit they said in the article isn't even true. That's why they called it propaganda. So what's the difference between that and an idiot getting on a live stream, firing up and saying anything? It's the same thing.
If you wrote a book that was an extremely negative book, like, I'm not going to say that guy's name, but if you wrote a book that was extremely negative, you don't have to worry about, you could put it in front of a 2-year-old. He's not going to be able to read it like that or even comprehend it. But if somebody's sitting up there on YouTube saying something crazy and your kid, parents are not paying attention and the kid is watching it, that's an extremely negative impact. So the reason why, when I'm saying impactful, I mean impactful in a way that is more beneficial to human society than negative. That's what I'm saying.
Do you think that the internet or cell phones have been more negative than positive?
It's part of the reason we're having so many difficulties right now.
Sure, I mean, it might be part of it, but I mean, like, the more impactful and powerful the invention, the more good and the more bad it can do, right? Like nuclear research, gives us amazing reactors that can produce a lot of energy relatively cleanly, and it also gives us atomic weapons that could maybe end the entire world, right? And I feel like cell phones and the internet are similar. I'm 34. You seem like an older guy, maybe, or like around my age, or maybe a little older. But like, I remember growing up, like if you asked somebody a question about anything, you had to pull out the fucking Encyclopedia Britannica to like look up an answer. And now you have like the world's information is at your fingertips. That's an unbelievably crazy advance in technology, right? Like that's the.
But don't you think that I actually like reading my Encyclopedia Britannicas? Don't you think that's a little more organic? Don't you think that it's more valuable when you actually have to search for the knowledge as opposed to someone just Googling it and not knowing for sure if it's accurate?
Maybe it could be, or there might be a lot of people that just don't do the search at all because they either don't have the books. Because if you had one of those sets of Encyclopedia Britannicas, you're paying like a lot of money for a good set of them, and then a lot of people just end up not knowing. I'm trying.
I'll give you that.
Not to like go too deep into this, but just circling back, like. Because you asked me what are like really impactful things. There have been really impactful things. We landed on the moon. We've got nuclear weapons. We've got the internet. I agree that these things can be good or bad. I'm just saying that they're impactful. It's like when Time chooses a person of the year. You know, like sometimes it's a really bad person. Sometimes it's a good person. There's people that are impactful. When I look at like the big differences that women have right now compared to like 30 years ago, or maybe 60, 70 years ago, the two big things that have changed for women are like college and work, and then reproduction. I think those are like the two huge. Those are like 95% of what has changed women, and then like 5% can be like Instagram, social media, Kim Kardashian, whatever. But I think those two things have been huge because it's allowed women to put off having children by using birth control or whatever, and it's allowed women to live independently from men. They don't have to marry somebody to find a job. And when I look at these two things, I don't think these things are going away. We're not getting rid of birth control, and we're not removing women from work or from school. So given that, and Red Pillars say this all the time, right? We can't think of an idealized world. We've got to look at the world we live in. If that's the world we live in, then I don't think it's enough to tell men that you should just be a top 1%er and then you're going to get a woman, right? You have to find a way to adapt at the world we're in, where women have changed significantly in the past 30 or 40 years. So that's why I talk from that frame of reference. Women are educated. Women do have birth control. So if you want to get a woman, you've got to work harder for it now. Whereas in the past, all you had to do was like just actually work a job and you'd be basically guaranteed a wife.
Well, no, it's not. To me, and this is just my opinion, this is not going to be popular.
I agree with Destiny about that. Like, at the end of the day, none of this is changing. So rather than complain about it, then let's just adapt to it. That's why I said, if anything, more so than being a hate group, a lot of the Red Pillars, honestly, they're just crybabies to me. They whine a lot, and they whine way too much. The conversation is kind of getting stale, though, man. I don't know if I'm going to make it all the way through it. Let's see.
But in my opinion, it's not about the men being top 1%ers. It's not even about taking away what women already have. Like, you can't put the cat back in the bag. That's not going to happen. My thing is, it's about carrying on a tradition of what you know works. I feel like in this day and age, we're just on this mission to dismantle everything that came before us, even if it worked.
I mean, so I don't necessarily disagree with you. So progressives or people really far on the left have a habit of wanting to dismantle everything without asking why it was the way that it was, right? So you'll have people on the left saying things like, oh, like gender roles are all fake. But it's like, okay, well, we've had like 10,000 years of them. Like, are they really that fake? So I agree with you that there are some traditions that, even if we don't carry them on, we at least need to understand like where they came from. But the world is changing. Even the way that our traditions, show themselves in society changes. And I think that if you don't want to get left behind by the world, like you have to change along with it. Like some things are probably here to stay, like some type of gendered dynamic in society. Like men and women are different. We're never going to be the exact same. That's never going to happen. But some things will change pretty dramatically, like maybe the way some of those gender roles play out or how dating plays out, and you either adapt or die. And that is the only thing you can do, because like you said before, it's not going back in the box of women not having reproductive rights and of women not working jobs. Like that's not going to change. So you have to figure out a way moving forward as a man, I think.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. While we're in this country, and the men in this country, the men in the West, are practicing this sort of new age of enlightenment, would you say that men of other countries are doing the same, or would you say that they're pretty much sticking to the traditional construct of what a man is?
I think the West got here first, but I think other countries are slowly starting to go through the same processes that we did. Like, we're just the trailblazers, but they're definitely following suit. So, like, if you go to, like, the Middle East, the men are going to be quite a bit more traditional. But, you know, like, even in Saudi Arabia, as of a few years ago, women can drive. You know, if you go to really, you know, older countries or places where the roles are a lot older, you're going to find pretty traditional men. But you'll find that, like, their birth rates are dropping off. They're not having a ton of children because they're not all dying, you know, to dysentery or some random shit. You will find that, like, the rest of the world is slowly following in our footsteps, and that seems to be a trend that's not going to change anywhere. Like, I don't know any place that's like, we are super successful and we have stuck with our traditional roles and nothing has changed. Like, all the most successful countries have been moving in this direction, and I can't think of any, like, counterexamples to that.
Well, the thing about it is there are countries that, you know, I'm pretty sure you pay attention to politics. There are countries that have made it a point to make for certain that they don't have certain things on their television shows and they don't have certain literature and things of that nature. What I see, in my personal opinion, I see China, I see Russia, I see India making it a point to make sure that they continue to raise traditional men. And when I say traditional men, I mean the more, for lack of a better phrase, the John Wayne, no nonsense type of guy. And I believe that they're doing that so that they can actually build stronger militaries. So I'll pose the question to you that I asked the guy last night that came onto my show. Do you think that the 18-year-olds of our country would be able to storm the beaches of Normandy today?
If they had to, I think you can. I feel like the circumstances create the people to some extent. I think that when you think of, like, an average 18-year-old today, you think of a guy with blue hair that's, like, crying on a college campus because he got triggered by something or some shit, right? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, like, a lot of people think that. But I think that, like, if our country were under legitimate threat, or if we had to go and, like, fight somewhere, like, we could do it, right? I mean, like, compare, for instance, like, Russia's invasion into Ukraine, which has been a disaster for Russia. Compare that to our invasion into Iraq. Now, whether you agree or disagree with that invasion, okay, I'm pretty sure Saddam was gone in, like, 2 weeks. So, like, we can say, like, yeah, like, okay, well,
no comment.
Okay, sure. But we can say that, like, okay, well, our people are weak, but, like, when our military has to do shit, like, shit gets done, like, very quickly. And a lot of that is on the backs of, like, technological improvement and the sophistication of our military today. Like, we don't need, I mean, like, in a way, that's a good example you bring up, because, like, we don't need people to storm a beach and run in and just get mowed down by machine guns anymore. Like, the world has evolved. I don't know if you watch, like, that combat footage subreddit, but Jesus Christ, people are flying around drones today, just, like, dropping grenades onto people and killing them. Like, it's insane how much the technology has changed for all of that. I think that when you look at places like China and India, I had a guy talk to me about this recently because he got really mad because somebody brought up a similar point that, like, oh no, China's very traditional. I think that when you are stuck in, like, a very developing area and all you can do is, like, eat, sleep, work, and that's all you've got, then yeah, you're not going to have many, like, people aren't going to be talking about, like, you know, transgender people when they're just trying to survive, right? You're not going to see marches for LGBT rights in, you know, in places where the people are struggling just to get enough food on the table. I agree with you there. But as places in India and China have gotten more successful, as their median incomes have grown, there is a lot of social dissatisfaction in some of these places, whether it's pushing for more gay people to be represented in areas, or whether it's pushing for, right now it's usually representation of government, but there's, like, this hierarchy of stuff that you push for, where, like, if you're developing, you're fighting for, like, I need fucking food and water. Then it's like, I need good job opportunities. Then it's like, I need representation of my government. I don't want to live in an authoritarian regime. And then once you've got that shit out of the way, then it's like, okay, I think that women should have more rights. I want to talk about LGBT issues. But, like, when you're still working on that, like, foundational shit, yeah, you're not going to see much in the terms of, like, what we fight about for social issues in the West, right? But, I mean, to some extent, I think that's a marker of our progress. Like, in some ways, it's really annoying when somebody goes on Twitter and they're like, I encountered a lot of sexism today because, like, somebody called me a bitch. But in other ways, it's actually really cool because it's like, okay, cool. Well, in your mind, really bad sexism is somebody calling you a bitch. That's a mark of progress, in my opinion, because it means there's a whole bunch more sexism that you're not experiencing that people in the past did.
Well,
I mean, that's all facts. That's a good points.
I'm a traditional guy, so I'm not really into the progressive stuff and all of that because I feel like when we get to the point where we allow like human beings having a imagination is awesome, but I feel like sometimes we've become so successful. It's kind of like what Bane said in The Dark Knight. Success has defeated us. Like, I feel like we start going into, when you start looking at intersectionalism, which I don't want to get into a huge debate about that, because I don't want to get, I guess, canceled. But when you look at intersectionalism, the reason why there's so much conflict there, the reason why there's so much conflict in this country when you have these discussions and these debates and stuff is because we're starting to get off into the weeds with certain ideas and certain ideologies. And it would be one thing if people lived their lives and didn't try to force their lifestyle or force their ideology onto everyone. But that's exactly what we live in nowadays. In fact, we live in a society now where if you're a traditional person, if you believe in certain things, like let's say for argument's sake that you're a religious person, let's say that you're a Christian, let's say that you believe in the nuclear family, let's say that you believe in just being a regular guy with a regular wife and children, you're under attack today by all of the people that are like, oh, you're old-fashioned and that's not progressive and we have to be understanding of this group and that group. You're literally under attack. Like most men that are traditional men are constantly getting a finger wagged in their face. That's the reason why the whole red pill concept and, the manosphere, whether it's the white one or the black one, that's the entire reason it exists.
Well, I mean, getting a finger wagged in their face by who? Because I think the traditional women who are with these traditional men aren't wagging a finger in their face. I think that they appreciate them. But, I mean, if you're talking about the greater society wagging a finger into the face of traditional men in traditional households, I mean, yeah, maybe. But I think that has less to do with hating men. And honestly, if we're just talking about from the Matrix perspective, it has less to do with that, more to do with consumerism. The more women are working, the more you can charge for rent, the more you can charge for products, the more you can charge for cars, because not every woman has to have a car because she has to drive to work. The more money you make in revenue for degrees, because not every woman is going out and getting a degree so she can make a good enough money to take care of herself. It's basically capitalism. Instead of just having a whole human being at the house just basically breastfeeding kids and tending to the crib, if we can get her out there and get her in the workforce, that's more money coming into our pockets. So that's one. If we're going to talk about the governmental perspective of this thing, they're masking women's empowerment under we just want to make more money in capitalism. I don't think it's necessarily a male hate thing.
Because men feel that they're being marginalized, ostracized from society.
Now, we're talking about radical feminists and things like that, then yes, there's a lot of male hate going on. But if we're just talking about the system, the beast, the matrix, I really think it has more to do with that.
They're just innately toxic, and that's wrong.
So, there are a lot of things that you're agreeing with, or that you're saying that I agree with. I just don't think that they're that gendered. When you talk about like getting off into the weeds with certain ideologies and attacking people for not believing in the right things, I think we do have a big problem with that today in society. I think a lot of it comes from the left kind of having their thumbs on a lot of the levers of cultural power, but I just don't think it's like a gendered thing. That's like a political, ideologically driven thing. Now, when you talk about like men are traditional men and they're getting fingers wagged in their faces, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's happening. I feel like people mix up a lot of the toxic aspects of red pill shit with like traditional things. If you're a good guy, you're working a good job, you go to church, and you're looking for like a traditional partner, you've got your shit handled, I don't think anybody's wagging their finger at you. In fact, because I've talked to a lot of conservative women, I think conservative women are dying to find men like that. But oftentimes, one of the biggest complaints that I hear, and I know men have the loudest voices online, so you hear about like all the whores and sluts and blah, blah, blah. When I talk to traditional women or conservative women, their complaints are always like, I have no fucking idea where you can ever find a good conservative man. They don't exist. It's a bunch of schizoid young men that sit in their basements, play computer games all day, and fantasize about like having a harem of 50 women they fuck, like the guys on Fresh and Fit tell them to do, right? Like I don't feel like places in the manosphere are.
And I gotta say, I hear this from a lot of women too. It's a lot of women in my comments. Some guys, they're sitting online, they're watching Fresh and Fit, they're watching Kevin Samuels, Richard Cooper, Lonnie Spence, whoever, and they're literally regurgitating this crap into real life. As far as I've had women come as far as to tell me that they've been asked if they're unicorns, they've been asked what they bring to the table, which is not questions you should be asking women. You should just be finding this out through vetting. If you want to know if she's an outlier, get to know her. If you want to know what she brings to the table, get to know her. Women been telling me, man, I've been asking them what their dress size is, just a bunch of wild, ridiculous crap. And I do agree with him that a lot of the guys out here, they taught that I want to be the patriarchy crap. They taught that I want to be the leader, masculine. I want to run my household. But like I said, they don't even have the means to be able to effectively do this. So a lot of it is just boviating and ego. And I basically want to stroke my own penis, for lack of a better word. But let's continue.
Good, positive, solid young men that are like good conservative men, because their engagement with religion is really bad. Look at fucking, I don't want to go down that whole Andrew Tate road if you don't want to, but like Andrew Tate coming out as Islamic after fucking running a casino and a cam business is like the two biggest, most haram things you can do in Islam, right? Or like a lot of these guys saying we need to embrace more like Christian values while telling you to have one-ended open relationships where you're fucking younger and younger women every year. I don't think that these are the centers of society that are going to be creating the traditional conservative man of tomorrow. It's just like the new marketing ploy that's being sold, and then all these guys that are falling into this shit, I call it OnlyFans for men, because it's just like it's rotting and destroying their minds, thinking them or leading them into thinking they're going to be something that they're never going to be, and it's not preparing them for the future in a way that I think a conservative person would be.
Well, I can't really speak for the whole space, but I do know that the vast majority of the guys that watch my show on a regular basis are those traditional type guys. Now, granted, a lot of them are already married. A lot of them are already in relationships. But what they find is here's the issue that they find. Let me break it down for you. What's happening is when they go out into the world and attempt to live a traditional life, they're constantly being told, these guys are constantly, meeting barriers, trying to live a traditional life. Now, when they go out here, I don't know where these conservative, traditional women that you're talking about are. I don't know where they congregate, but these are the complaints that guys give to me, that they have so much difficulty finding these type of women, especially in Black culture. In Black culture, we have an issue where there's this culture of promiscuity. There's this culture
of, so number one, I find feminine, nurturing, caring, traditional, submissive women all the time. Baby girl literally does not work. She spends her day cooking, cleaning, and working on her lotion business. As I mentioned earlier in the video, my ex didn't work, spent the majority of her day cooking and cleaning, then decided to go back to school, okay? If you go through the shorts on my page, you see women cooking for me all the time. All the time. You even see women paying to take me on dates. All the time. You see women reciprocating. You see women in their femininity literally all the time. You see women writing me cards, all types of stuff. So when you're saying you can't find traditional, feminine, nurturing, caring, submissive women, I have to question what type of men are these who are saying this, and what type of places are they congregating in? Because you are what you attract at the end of the day. Now, am I going to go out here and pretend that there's a bunch of women who are just like dying to be traditional, submissive, nurturing, caring women or housewives? No. But what I will tell you is if you're a real man with the real means to provide that, and they really trust in you and they really believe in you and you can really connect to them and you can unlock them. First of all, when a woman's in love with you, she'll run through a wall for you, and that's just a fact. So if the least you want her to do is, hey, I just want you to stay in this crib, cook, clean, tend to the kids, and let me go and get this bag, and you hold this household down for me, because that's the most effective that we could be as a couple, and she loved you, she will 100% do that. I think the biggest problem of why men today have issues finding traditional women is because they make the false assumption that women who are lower earners or come from lower earning situations are the ones who are going to just be these nurturing, caring, submissive, feminine women because they feel like, oh, well, I could change this woman's life financially, so she's just going to fall into that. And that's usually not the case. I keep trying to tell you guys, as someone who finds these type of women all the time, most women who are going to be traditional are going to come from high earning families or be high earning women themselves. Why? Because women from high earning families, generally their parent mothers didn't have to work. Women who become high earners themselves usually congregate around men, around coworkers, or women who come from high earning families, and they see those women not working. Or they see a high earning woman get with a high earning man and take a couple of years off her job, and the high earning man pays for everything, and then she goes back when the kids get of a certain age. But you can't expect a lower income woman to have traditional mindset, because a lower income woman is born into the struggle where she has to grind and work hard to take care of herself just to put another meal on the table for herself, let alone if she has any kids. And traditionally, generally, if she's a lower earning, lower socioeconomic woman, she probably comes from a lower earning socioeconomic family, which means that she was probably taught to be this way. As in to basically grind, work hard, and not rely on no man. Because her mother was probably never in a situation where she could rely on a man in the first place. So that's most likely why you're running into that situation, because you're looking in the wrong places. But let's continue.
Different type of things where every single woman they encounter is part of the sexual revolution. So they're going to be, a little more free sexually. And that's a nice way of putting it. So when these guys are out here actually looking for marriageable women, they're coming up short. They can't find any, because part of the new age way of thinking,
I would have to say at that point that they're not a marriageable man. Because let's be honest here, while we're talking about how women are non-traditional, women don't want to do the traditional roles, again, we would be being disingenuous if we pretended that most men want to be married in the first place with one woman and have a family and have kids and pay all the bills and completely take care of women. That's rare too. If you don't believe me, ask women, they'll tell you. Most dudes just want to smash, or they want to go 50-50. So if you're a traditional man and that's what you believe and that's the energy you're putting out into the world, as I always say, you are what you attract. I attract traditional women because I'm a genuinely traditional man. I don't do it out of wanting me to be controlling or to wanting to have, control over what women think or what women do or how women act. I do it because I don't want my kids to be in a public school indoctrination camp. I do it because if you only make $40,000 or $50,000 a year, you're going to be paying your whole check in daycare, because daycare can run anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000 a month, which is basically what you'll be making every single check. And that's before they take taxes out. So before you do all that, why don't you just stay home and take care of the kids yourself? Then we don't have to pay a daycare. Then we don't have to pay for a tutor, because you could tutor your kids when they get out of school. And then we can actually raise our children instead of putting them into the public school indoctrination camp to be raised by someone else, and we don't even know what values they're being taught at daycare. We don't even know what values they're being taught at the school. I also want to give you the time in which you deserve to rest in your femininity, so you can stay in shape for me, so you can stay looking young because you're not stressed out by the world, so that my house can be clean, so I can have a good meal when I come home. I spend a lot of my time now eating out solely because I literally just don't have the time to cook, because I'm always working. Having a woman who could prepare me a home cooked meal so that way I don't get hypertension or some shit would be invaluable to me. So you have to ask, are these men putting out that type of energy? When a woman asks them why they want a housewife, can they even verify this type of stuff? Because women ask me, why does it matter that I cook? Why does it matter that I clean? Why do you want a housewife? This ain't the 1950s. And when I break down why I want a housewife, that's usually what makes them go, wow. That makes complete sense. And that's what makes them get into their feminine, nurturing, caring, submissive energy, on top of the facts that I have the means to provide that. So again, this has more to do with the men than it does with the women. Yes, there are a lot of ratchet ass hoes nowadays, but at the end of the day, if you're a real man, you're ratchet repellent. They don't want nothing to do with you because they can't manipulate you and they can't make you a sucker. So they're going to run away from you. So if these guys are running into these types of girls, I have a hard time believing that they're really these type of men.
Is that women should be able to do the things that men have traditionally done. And the sad part is, whenever you hear that, it's always women taking the most negative things of men and then touting that as empowerment. This is what the guys are encountering on a regular basis, where the women, they want to do the same things. They want to have the same equality as men, which is fine. but they don't want the same accountability, the same responsibility. It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, if you're willing to be in the right, have you heard of this? I know you've heard this saying. Have you heard of the saying, dress for the job that you want?
Yeah.
Yeah. The idea is like, you should carry yourself through life like you're where you want to be, because that's how you're going to find that place, essentially, right? I'll hear people say this, like, I don't know where to find conservative women. And then you like ask them, well, where are you looking? And they're like, well, I've tried Tinder, I've gone on Bumble, I've gone on Hinge. And it's like, okay, do you go to a church? Like, do you have a community of like conservative friends? Have you been involved in any political or community organizing? Because like, especially in the Black community, right? Like, women are like the backbones of all of these things. And if you're looking for conservative people and you're in those areas, you'll find them there. But I feel like people aren't setting themselves up in a conservative lifestyle. Like, if you tell me you're looking for a conservative woman and you're not part of your local church, like, Jesus, that's like the number one place to start, right? Because these are where, off of churches, are where all of your community building activities are going to stem from. Every church has a bulletin board where people are doing things. A lot of churches are involved in like community outreach. You can volunteer. You meet a ton of people this way. But people aren't willing to go out and look for it. Yeah, but I feel like in terms of that type of advice, I never hear red pillars talking about that. It's always like the sexual marketplace and high value men are these things you have to do to exploit the dynamics of the evolutionary psychology of women so that you can fuck as many women as possible. And that's why you're going to be 1%. And like, that's the message I hear over and over and over and over and over again, rather than like, look up your local archdiocese, start going to your church every Sunday. And when church ends, everybody's chatting with each other because that's what they do. Sometimes the priest or whatever will come out and talk to people, and you just like talk to people and you meet friends that way. Like, that's how you organically grow out a group of friends. But I don't hear that advice ever in the manosphere.
He has a good point. Now, I did a video a while ago. Y'all can go and check that out, where I told men this is where you find high value women. What did I say? I said go to high-end gyms. High-end, expensive gyms. You will find women who come from high-earning families or who are high earners themselves. They'll be in those gyms. Okay, and even if you're working for conservative women, pretty much the same thing, okay? They'll be in those gyms. I've told men, start going to Met Galas, where you have to dress up, suit and tie, all right? You'll meet high-level, high-value women there, okay? Stop going to hole-in-the-wall bars and clubs, similar to what he said, okay? And start going to, like, rooftop lounges, okay? Or boat or yacht events and parties, right? And we're talking about events where it costs hundreds of dollars to get into, right? Like, at the rooftop bar that I frequent, if you would have went there for New Year's, it literally cost $1,000 just to go. And it costs $5,000 to get a table. You're only going to run into a certain level of women who are able or even willing to pay that amount of money. Okay. Are you going to networking events? Okay. Are you going to your local festivals? Are you going to your local, carnivals? Okay. Like, similar to what Destiny said, like, where are you looking for and seeking these women out? Do you have a network of high earning friends to hang out with who will put you around these women? Okay. Do you live in the suburbs? There's going to be a lot of traditional women in the suburbs. There's going to be a lot of high earning women in the suburbs. There's going to be a lot of housewife ready women in the suburbs, probably still in their father's house, waiting for someone to come and get them out. Have you put yourself in position to be in the suburbs? Do you frequent around the suburbs? Okay. Do you have high earning female friends? Do you know, like, all these things mix into where you find these types of women. But also, again, your masculinity as a man, today, most women are probably going to be trained to say, I don't want to be that. But if you're masculine enough, if you're man enough, you have your shit together, you have a real plan, and you can explain to them why you want them to be a housewife outside of trying to control them or dictate their time, or just because you don't want your woman working. You could break down a real plan. Listen, this is why I want a housewife. This is why I have what I have to provide for it. They'll get with the program. Really doesn't matter if they were raised to be that way or not at that point. If you can make it make sense to them, they will get with the program. Like I said, when a woman loves you, she will run through a wall for you. We've all seen women give men their cars, and these dudes take their cars and go out to cheat. Women move men in their house. That's where the term "lay down with a dog, get up with fleas" come from. Women, when you unlock that love chip in them, they will do anything for you, literally. So if you're really that guy and you got it together like that, you're just like, listen, this is what I want for you to do. I want you to be a traditional woman. She's going to do it. She's going to do it. But those are just some tips on some places where you could find women who are already set up and sanctioned to be that way by default, and you don't have to do as much work. But similar, like he's saying, you're on Tinder, you're on, what I'm saying? You're not going to find that. You're not. You could, but then again, like I said, I would go back to your masculinity. If you're going to use dating apps and you on Tinder and Hinge, most of them are going to be bots. They're going to think, oh, we're going to do the 50-50 thing. You're going to have to put them in the space for them to be housewives. They're going to have to believe in you enough that you can even take care of them if they open up and become that. Like, there's levels to that.
I hate the reason why you never hear that in the manosphere is because the biggest hoes usually go to church. They're usually the most promiscuous. They're usually the most trifling. Like, guys wish it was that.
And I actually agree with him about that. The biggest hoes do usually go to church. That's why on my list of where to find traditional women, I did not say church. Now, with that being said, I do know plenty of men of multiple races who have found good girls at church, right? But also, I'm going to keep reiterating this point because it's the truth. A woman is as good or bad as you make her. As a man, it's always your fault. You're the leader. You set the tone for the relationship. She's going to follow what it is you set up. If you say, I want a traditional woman, I put myself in position to be able to afford one, that's what I want, and she doesn't want to do it, then she's going to leave. If you put that down and she wants to do it, then she's going to stay. But I will agree 100% with Angryman that it's a lot of hoes in church. It's a whole lot of hoes in church. I usually don't recommend going to church for that reason. Again, there are good girls there, but there's a whole lot of hoes. And a lot of hoes know, okay, I done ran the streets. I'm going to go into church and pretend to be a good girl because they know that that's a place where men look for good girls at. So you definitely can get got in the church. That's the truth. He's spitting facts there.
Could just go to church and find a good wholesome girl at church. They can't. That's usually where the worst ones are at.
On average, do you think the women in church are going to be more promiscuous, or like women that are like at a bar or a club?
Bro, they do the same thing.
So every woman
twerking,
everywhere, there are no more conservative women.
They're twerking. They're twerking in church. When you look at the black community, the vast majority of the men don't even go to church anymore. They've checked out, and the reason why they checked out is because of the ridiculousness that's going on in the church. You got the Baptist preacher actually having sex with women in the congregation. You've got women actually twerking in church. You've got the single mothers sitting on the front pew of the church. Like, the church, especially in the black community, I can't speak for the white community, but in the black community, the church is lost, bro. It's done.
Well, it's funny because when this conversation first started, he just said what I said. He said, I can't speak for the white community. Exactly. So why are you speaking about the black community with a white guy? Why not just leave it at men and women? Why are you turning it into a black community debate? I feel like it's the only logical reason I could think that he would do that is just because he feels like that's the area he could win. Because it's like, why?
Coming from?
Destiny speaking in general, so like, why don't you speak in general?
From?
Yeah.
Well,
if the church is fucked because it's all like single moms and people like. It seems like it takes two to tango, right? Like it can't just be all on black women, well, right?
Actually, no, it does. Actually, no, it doesn't take two to tango. And the reason why is because what's going on in the black community is you have a large group of women that are actually having sex with multiple men, having children with multiple men. You actually have twice as many women in the black community have children as the men. Twice as many.
Yeah, but why is that? There are some cities where there's like 3 black women.
See, now we're devolving into a black woman versus the black man debate. How did we get from talking about the dynamics between men and women to a black woman versus a black man debate? And why are we talking about this with Destiny? And what annoys me about this is a white man is never going to have a conversation, right, about the problems he has with his woman with a black man. Richard Cooper's not going to bring Angryman on and start going in about how white women don't listen to their divorce grape enough. It's not going to happen. That's why they had to make a black manosphere in the first place, right? Just Pearly Things is not going to bring on 6 the guys and have a whole conversation about all the problems she's having with her white men. She's not going to do it. But you'll have black men sit here and have a whole damn debate about black women and what black women are doing wrong and what's wrong in our community with a white man. Why? And I'm not being racist here. I'm just being real. For what? Dustin, you don't even know what you're talking about. Again, he was talking in general. Now you're making this a black-white thing. Just like they'll take just pearly things and insert her into a conversation with black women and say, hey, white women, correct these black women. Like, it's wild to me. I don't understand it. You can't speak on the white community. He can't speak on the black community, not effectively. So why have this conversation with him? Just keep it in general. I don't understand. Again, I don't understand how this became, this is what black women think do. Other than that, he thought that this was a spot where he could win more easily. But let's continue.
One man that's not in jail, right? Like, I mean, like, depending on the city that you live in, the availability for some of these black women to even find a guy, the competition is fierce.
There's a number of factors. The competition is very fierce, and there's a number of reasons for that. Number one, we have a small percentage of the population. Black women, last time I checked, outnumbered the men by about 3 or 4 million, something crazy like that. Part of the reason is because of Planned Parenthood. In our community, they actually go to Planned Parenthood to the tune of 367,000 per year. That's 1,000 every day. So that already right there, you have a lower population of.
Hey, see, this is what I'm talking about. Why are you telling you basically at this point spitting out all black women's dirt to this white man? Why? We're supposed to be talking about the dynamics between men and women. Why are you making it about black women? And why I'm not going to sit here and deny that, yeah, Planned Parenthood and deletions play a part in why there's more black women than black men. Most women are deleting their babies before they even know the sex. So I don't know how big of a part that is. But we also have to consider the fact that there are a lot of black men are dead or in jail before they turn 24 because they choose to go the street route to make fast money versus just going to school, getting an education and taking the long route. A lot of them are killing each other. We can't deny that fact. So let's see if he's going to bring that up, even though I don't expect him to.
There's black people in general due to that. In addition to that, there has been an issue with mass incarceration, thanks to good old Joe Biden with the 94 crime bill. So you have a lot of brothers that are locked up. So that diminishes the amount of black men as well. In addition to that, you have the cultural problem of black women not being very easy to get along with and not being easy to cohabitate with. So you have black men who seek relationships outside of the black race, outside of the country, with the passport bros, with SYSBM, all of those different things. So then you end up with an even lower amount. And what happens is
let's not act like there's a large percentage of black men who are passport bros. It's not. Like, it's not. And you're bringing up online communities. Most men in real life who really getting women and really doing their thing are not sitting here being passport bros or SYSBM. Most black men don't know what the hell this is. If I went outside in D.C., if I went outside in Baltimore, if I went outside in New York, if I went outside in Atlanta, if I went outside, I said, hey, you know what SYSBM and the passport bros are? They're going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? So that doesn't really have anything to do with it. This is taking the internet too serious and taking internet talking points and trying to use them in real life, which I told you guys at the beginning of the video doesn't work. But let's continue.
Sisters, you have black women out here that are more prone to deal with what people call the Pookies and the Ray Rays, and they'll go out here and they'll have kids, they'll have children with 1, 2, maybe even 3 different men. And the reason why that is because it's been incentivized by our government, unfortunately. A lot of these women are doing that in order to supplement their lifestyle with welfare, food stamps, child support, all of those different things. There's a bunch of different factors that weigh into that.
Okay, for whatever we want to blame black women for this, black men are just as culpable, right? We can complain about the mass incarceration from the 93 crime bill all we want, but Joe Biden doesn't make somebody sell weed. Joe Biden doesn't make somebody carry an unregistered firearm. Joe Biden doesn't make somebody a gangbanger. Like, these are choices that are still being made, that are being made by black men that fuck over black women in the community. And I think that the cultural problems stem from a lot of the kind of like dysfunction that goes back and forth there. I don't think it's fair to blame black women on everything. Like, we can talk about like food stamps and welfare and all that too, but that exists for black people and white people and every other type of person in the United States. But it seems like the black community has like a special problem with it, right?
Well, hold on. No, when we're talking about that, when we're talking
he wants to bring up the Biden crime bill, right? Which we all know was unfair and was locking up a lot of people for nonviolent criminal offenses and things of that nature, right? But similar to what Destiny says, he does have a point. you didn't have to be in the streets or even putting yourself in that situation in the first place, which is what I just brought up. And the thing is, so now you're airing out black women's dirty laundry. So now he's airing out black men's dirty laundry. Now we're not talking about white people at all. And this is what happens. And this is my thing. Black people constantly get tricked into airing their dirty laundry out for the world to see all the time. Destiny ain't saying nothing about white women that nobody doesn't know. He's not saying anything specific about white women actually at all. He's keeping it just about women. He's not dropping any secrets. He's not saying, well, white women do this, well, white women do that, or any of that. Nor are we having any discussion about all the crimes that white men commit, like how white men are the biggest pedo bears in the country, how white men can roast the most grapes in the country. We're not talking about any of that. Now, because Angryman started talking about black women going and getting deletions and the crime bill and all this crap, now we're having a conversation about all the problems in the black community, as if there's not problems in any other community, and we're no longer even focused on men and women. We're sitting here airing out the dirty laundry of black women to a white man. And now the dirty laundry of black men is being discussed for no reason when that wasn't even a topic of conversation. Black people stupidly get themselves into these type of situations all the time. This is not a discussion you should be having with Destiny.
There are things that are very specific, okay? One book written by, what is her name? Elizabeth Hinton, who I think went to Yale. I think she's a professor in African American studies at either Yale or I
Isn't
think
she a historian?
If I'm not mistaken. She wrote From the War on Poverty to the War on Crime, and she pointed out through her research, right after you get the 65 Voters' Rights Act, you actually have a overhauling of the criminal justice system, where they started policing urban areas more heavily. This is right after the Industrial Revolution, where you have black people migrating into the urban centers. You have them policing them more heavily. Okay, you actually have what is the equivalent of today billions of dollars funneled into that criminal program. I forgot the name of it, but the purpose was to create probation officers, all of these different things to create a revolving door in the criminal justice system, which has affected the black community significantly. So, yeah, it's wrong for any black man to go out here and commit crimes and do things that he doesn't have any business. But it has been historically proven over and over again that black men have been disproportionately targeted by the criminal justice system, especially with particular crimes. When you have certain narcotics that black men get a harsher sentence for, whereas other groups of men might get a slap on the wrist, or even worse when it comes to unaliving somebody. More often than not, when a white guy goes to jail for unaliving somebody, they end up getting a manslaughter charge as opposed to second degree or whatever degree or whatever. Now, I'm not trying to play the victim Olympics. I'm just saying.
Oh, yes, you are. That's why you just said you're not trying to play the victim Olympics, because you know what it sounds like, because that's exactly what you're doing, playing the victim Olympics. But let's continue. And none of this has any, first of all, I want to point this out. None of this has anything to do with the dynamics between men and women. It also doesn't have anything to do with the dynamics between black men and black women, which he forced this conversation to be about. Nor does it have anything to do with making the decision to get in the streets in the first place. Yes, black men face harsher sentences for committing the same crimes that white men do. Yes, we're unfairly policed. Yes, we're unfairly brutalized, but that still doesn't have anything to do with them being out in the streets in the first place, which they would have had to been for the crime bill to have affected them. The problem with the crime bill was that black men were getting locked up for way too long for non-violent offenses and drug charges, but they were out on the corners. So how does any of this, yeah, they're treated unfairly and they serve longer sentences? Correct. But they didn't have to be out in the corners in the first place. You gotta take some culpability for that. I mean, come on, man.
We looked up, the research is out there. Yeah, so it's not not just that black men are just like, oh, we're gonna go.
That's why one of my most viral videos was black men do not get a criminal record. Do not. You will never be able to get your own place. It's going to be hard for you to start your own business. It's going to be hard for you to get a good job. It's going to be hard for you to travel.
or whatever, like right around the time that they overhauled the welfare program in 90, in freaking 96, not 96, in 65 and 66, you see a rise in single parent households. You see a rise in single parent households. You had a number of things that occurred that affect that. You had the emergence of the prison industrial complex. You're just coming out of the Vietnam War, which a lot of black men lost their lives to that. And now you have this welfare program where if you have a man in the house, one of the stipulations is you don't qualify for those particular things, which is unfortunate because during that time, you had a really serious problem with poverty. So there's a number of factors that play into all of that.
So to preface this, I just will comment as a small jab. I think it's funny that you're citing a woman who is a historian who went to Yale. So historians are important, right?
That is funny. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
I thought she was a historian. That's why I said that. I'm like, isn't she a historian?
Or the poverty one or whatever, right? But regardless of that, everything you said might be true, but none of that is black women's fault. I just don't think it's fair to blame black women. Like, you can't blame black women for men being incarcerated. When police are policing these areas, black men are the ones that are engaging in the crime. The black women aren't. And I guess it just feels a little shitty to blame black women when at the end of the day, they're the ones that get saddled with all of the community responsibility. They've got to be the backbone of like all these families, of all these churches, of all these things that are like the only way these communities function are on the backs of these like single black women moms. And then say, well, hold on, let me finish. And then for black men to turn around and say, well, we got policed really heavily, and so we got caught selling drugs, and that's why you guys are all single moms, and that's why your lives are fucked up. But it's black women's fault for everything that happens in the black community. Okay. I think there's a lot of fault that could be evenly doled out to both sides. Is what I say. I wouldn't blame black women for it.
Here's the thing with this. All right, there is so much nuance in all of that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. This is why you shouldn't be talking about it with Destiny, because Destiny doesn't understand the nuance, because he's not black. I don't understand this. This doesn't make any sense. None.
The guys that were caught selling drugs that weren't selling drugs. Okay, you have a lot of guys that had issues where they got pulled over and, oh, surprise, there's drugs in the car. Where did that come from? Okay, so that's one thing. There's nuance like that. Doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. All right. Then on top of that, when you're talking about it's not the black women's fault, black women are willing participants in a system that they actually know for a fact is disproportionately prejudiced to their group of men. Okay, they know this. This is not a game. They go to these offices knowing that they can actually take advantage of this system by, oh, I'm in a relationship with a black man who ain't hitting on nothing and don't want to work and blah, 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 all of those different things. So we can't ignore that. We can't ignore that. Now, to sit here and say, oh, it's all black women's fault. I never said it was all black women's fault. But there is a large percentage of black women who have been incentivized to have children out of wedlock. They've been incentivized to utilize a system that they know benefits them. And they do this on a regular basis.
Okay, just as a quick,
on a regular basis.
Do you really believe that there's like people out there that are like, I want to have a kid so I get welfare?
Yes. I don't believe it. I know it. I don't believe it. I know it.
Why do? Okay, why do?
Okay, so when we're talking about that,